Among those who went up to worship at the feast were some Greeks. These approached Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and put this request to him: "Sir, we should like to see Jesus." A strange behavior on the part of these Greeks. They want to see Jesus. See Jesus? But that was so easy. They could see Jesus every day in the streets of Jerusalem, and they could see him every day in the temple. In fact, these men ask for more. In their request, we find echoes of Jesus' meeting with his first disciples. Jesus had asked those who were following him from behind, "What do you seek?" They had replied, "Master, where are you staying?" He had answered, "Come and see." Like the first disciples of Jesus, the Greeks of today's gospel are seekers. The step that they take is the beginning of their faith. For them to see Jesus is to get introduced to him, to make his acquaintance, and if possible, to become his followers. Their desire to get to know Jesus, the new rabbi who it seems to break the boundaries and usher in a new vision of the world, is quite understandable. Okay, but they are Greeks, that is to say, pagans. That is why this humility on their part, their precaution of going through the intermediary of Philip, who came from a region under Greek influence, and who himself seems uncomfortable to transmit their request to the Master. Philip seeks the help of Andrew, and both of them go to meet the Lord. Between Jesus and these Greeks, there is a barrier, like in the temple of Jerusalem. As you entered the temple, there was the first courtyard, the courtyard of the foreigners, beyond which anybody who was not a Jew could not step in. Then came the courtyard of the Jews, followed by the precincts reserved for priests, and then the sanctuary with its veil. At the death of Jesus, this veil was torn into two, right down the middle. For these Greeks, Jesus is like an inaccessible sanctuary. We, the men of this world, love to erect walls and enclosures and divide us among ourselves. And later these ghettos transform into interior prisons inside individuals. In our world, so many men and women are imprisoned, or imprison themselves inside false ideas, false ideologies, doubtful values, and ill-placed confidences. It is really hard to get rid of these prisons unless one passes through death a bit. Do you know why on seeing the Greeks, Jesus says, "A grain of wheat must fall to the ground and die if it is to bear much fruit"? Today, dying a bit to themselves by cutting across the frontiers of their culture, their race, their language, and their religion, these Greeks have come to meet Jesus in Jerusalem. By taking this step, they put themselves on the same wavelength as his, and they join him in the path that he has come to trace. Jesus himself looks upon this event as the summit of a long adventure. For ever since he is among his people, he has never stopped crossing borders and breaking down walls that exist between men and women. His passion for men has led him up to the lowest rungs of humanity. It is thus that he has stopped by the blind beggar at the roadside, touched the untouchable, the leper, and entered under the roof of a social outcast. In this long migration across borders, he came into contact with a strange world of strangers: the Samaritan, the Roman centurion, the Canaanite woman. Do you remember these people? They were not Jews, they were foreigners. In these men and women of distance, beyond all the differences that keep them apart, Jesus met humanity in its depths. A stranger is also a man with a heart, with a family, a man with hopes, who cries out his suffering, a man all of a sudden capable of making an act of faith and give himself up for a cause. Truly I say to you, not even in Israel have I found such faith. At such depths, the encounter with a stranger becomes a mystical experience, an act of praise to the glory of God. That is why on seeing the Greeks, Jesus exults for joy. The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Whoever has never lived such instants in life cannot know how much God's grace can brighten up one's whole being. With the Greeks who have come up to Jerusalem, it is one of the finest branches of humanity in blossom that comes and joins Jesus in his own climbing up to the holy city. Their desire joins his own. The grain of wheat fallen to the ground can now die. A new people of God is already emerging on the horizon. To follow Jesus Christ implies that each one of us, as far as possible, find the means to knock down one or more of these walls that divide people. To meet the stranger, to discover in him a brother, or in her a sister, to hear him say in his own language, that is, the language of his neighborhood and of his culture, his desire to see Jesus, which is also his desire to be recognized and loved, involves a great risk. It is thus that a conflict slowly took shape around Jesus. From the very beginning, Jesus knew that his mission will lead him into confront one of the greatest of man's sins, the refusal of others. Eventually, that will take him to the cross. He warns us today, "Where I am, there shall my servant be also." It will be the same for all those who follow Christ and experience the great burn of the encounter, the burn that purifies and transforms us. In this fifth Sunday of Lent, let us allow the long murmur of the Greeks ascend within us. We should like to see Jesus. We want to see Jesus. Let us repeat it to the apostles Philip and Andrew. Like them, would we also know to be mediators between the cry of the poor and the liberating presence of Christ? Would we also know to be a grain of wheat fallen to the ground? In our daily existence, which has become so humdrum and tiresome, here is a reason to live that can transfigure our lives and make us overflow with joy.